All right, y'all, we're back again for part two of my festival healing story. Came in with another fun fit for y'all. Last time, we talked about how creative expression, deep healing through inner child work, and ecstatic aliveness are key elements of the festival world. We also talked about how these festival spaces are activating, but not automatically healing. We talked about how these spaces use the elements of creativity and self-expression, inner child work, and ecstatic aliveness to awaken and activate healing within us. But ultimately, healing is not automatic. The aliveness that we experience in these spaces is a given, but healing only happens when you infuse intention into these experiences. And ultimately, these experiences have a lot of intention already infused into them to help you have a more healing experience, because the people who run them are utilizing a formula that humans have been tapping into for centuries. Way beyond just decades for Woodstock and whatnot. But truly, humans have been using these elements: nature, dance, community, and altered states of consciousness. We're going to get into that today too. All of these have been utilized. They're ancient technologies, not modern inventions. And this is how you really tap into transformative experiences. And the truth is, none of these things are new, right? What is really new is how disconnected we and our society are from these basic medicines that humans have been utilizing for so long. And the real truth that I would like to pull the curtain back from for all of us in this modern world is that we really like to overcomplicate our problems. But often the medicine that we need is very simple. So simple that it's easy to dismiss as inconsequential. But our ancestors knew the potency of these elements. And what feels like a revelation to us is actually simply a remembering. And so festivals tap into these long used elements that human gatherings have been centered around forever and put them into a concentrated experience. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to cover how nature, dance, community, and altered states create the circumstances for change and transformation. So you'll notice I'm not out in my backyard like I was for the last one. I hoped to be, because nature is the first thing I want to talk about, but nature had its own plan today and it rained. But let's talk about nature, because most of our modern lives are spent indoors, under a ceiling, and ultimately our disconnection from being outside and from connecting with the natural world is a big part of why our society is so sick. And of course, there's actual research, if it doesn't already make obvious sense that connecting with the natural world will make you feel better. There have been studies on a practice called forest bathing, which is something done in Japan. And basically, it's a practice of going out into the forest and spending time in nature, unplugged from our technology-driven world and stepping back into a quiet, natural environment. And these studies are showing a major decrease in stress hormones in folks after they are spending time out in nature. Truly, nature reduces your cortisol, reduces rumination and overthinking, and it improves your overall mood. Most of us are really deprived of it. But nature is ultimately can calm the nervous system, slow the mind, and really bring us back out of survival and into a relaxed and centered space. And so it is so influential in the festival experience because, of course, we're out in nature surrounded by beautiful mountains. What I'm thinking of is the Coachella Valley mountains with the palm trees swaying, or other spaces where I've been in the beautiful rolling hills of Southern California. In fact, there's been so many times that I don't remember the music I was at, but I remember taking a moment to just look out at the scenery and being so in awe of it. So in awe of the beauty and the colors. And there's even this one time, speaking of rolling hills, where I was leaving a festival event early. I packed up in the car with my partner and friend who was driving us out. It was not the last day of the festival, so people were still dancing and partying on the dance floor, and I had dropped earlier. And so as we're leaving and the music is rolling behind us and we drive down the dirt road into these rolling hills, these golden rolling hills, I have my forehead just pressed against the window and the sun is beginning to set, and we've got Rufus Du Sol playing, and it is one of the most potent memories I have of being in awe of nature. I could not contain myself with the oohs and the ahs and the, oh, it's so pretty. And it made a lot of sense to my partner later when he remembered that I was still feeling the effects of some substances from earlier in the day. But those elements, those experiences are enhanced by those altered states of consciousness, and they really allow us to experience them in a more pure way, more open way than we are in our typical mode of consciousness. It only amplifies what's already there, right? It's not creating that. And while nature is always beautiful at these events, it's not always gentle. You know, you're up against a lot out there. I have been up against 50-mile-per-hour high winds in the desert. I've been to festivals where it is a high of 80 degrees during the height of the day, and at night it drops down to around 40. So having to deal with extreme temperature changes. And then, of course, you're out there camping in the elements. All sorts of problems will come up, and you have to really problem solve without the regular comforts of our modern world. And you have to work with the weather and Mother Nature, right? She has her own way about things, but ultimately it adds to the experience, because being at odds with the elements is really what allows these experiences to be training grounds for resilience and adaptability, which are something that are crucial elements when we talk about healing mental health. Those two skill sets, resilience and adaptability, are what needs to be developed to overcome a lot of our mental health problems in the world, right? And so amidst all the fun, you're also navigating all of these other elements which are forcing you to really access, at some level, your sense of survival and taking care of yourself in real time. You will face these moments where you're uncomfortable and challenged, and that kind of friction is what also activates change. All right, so if nature is helping regulate us through our outer environment, right? Dance is what's helping us regulate our body from the inside and release stress. And that's what we're going to talk about for point number 2. Dance is one of the most powerful medicines that I think humans have ever known, and yet our modern world doesn't quite make that connection. And yet there is growing research to support it. In fact, there was a recent study done on treating symptoms of depression, and it was discovered that dance was by far the most beneficial form of movement to help heal and reduce depressive symptoms, so much more than any other form of exercise. sometimes even outperforming medication. Yes, dancing can even work better than your antidepressants. But how is that? Why? Let's get into it. The truth is, dancing isn't just movement, it's deep somatic work. It activates our vagus nerves. It releases dopamine and serotonin. It lowers our cortisol, and it synchronizes our breath and our body. It drops us out of the mind and into the body, into a flow state. And when you dance, you can quite literally shake the tension and the stress from your body. Shaking is a biological mechanism built into every animal, including us humans, to help us exit the stress response, specifically the freeze stress response, which so many of us actually are stuck in with our overthinking and our paralyzed to make movement forward, our indecision. All of that's freeze response, right? And that was huge for me. That was a big draw. Dance was a big draw for me to go to festivals, not because I knew how good it was for me, but because I loved dancing and moving so much. And I didn't do it in my everyday life. I only did it mostly did it, I should say. Sure, turn on some music while I get ready and dance around. But so much of my dancing was focused on these experiences outside of my everyday life. And I even remember there's this one particular memory. I don't remember the year. Sometimes they all blur together now, but it was at Coachella at main stage, and Calvin Harris was playing main stage, which was a big deal because they hadn't really put EDM DJs at this main stage before. But I'm there in this massive crowd and I'm looking around and I'm seeing all the bodies synchronized and moving. And at first it feels eerie and even a little robotic, almost like dystopian. But actually what I was witnessing was so much more ancient, right? We're talking really about ancient technologies in this video. And what was happening was deeply ancient because this massive group of people were syncing. Their bodies were locking into the same rhythm. Their nervous systems were co-regulating. And the truth is there is actual science behind all of this, that when people get onto a dance floor together and synchronize, there is a huge release of endorphins and oxytocin, and it increases social bonding, it reduces stress, and it's so powerful, ultimately helping you feel connected to something larger and actually feel like you belong. That's what brings us into the next point. Point number 3, which is community. Community is another long time, ancient human technology that our modern world has really lost touch with. In fact, we are living in a loneliness epidemic. For most of human history, we lived embedded in communities, right? We were interdependent and we relied on each other. But nowadays, instead, we lived packed in closely but disconnected, trying to socialize over screens but not in person, right? At the touch of a button, we can get anything but not have to interact with a person at all. And studies are showing that loneliness actually has the same amount of ill effect on our health as smoking does. And you're even more likely to die if you live alone than if you are connected to community. It will literally shorten your lifespan. But the festival experience is a radically different experience. And it really gives you this opportunity to belong to a tribe that I perhaps believe you could probably feel if you were part of team sports or your family could give that to you. But as someone who didn't get into athletics until later in life and who was the black sheep of her family, this space was the first time that I really got to feel like I belonged to a larger group that would take care of me and provide for me if I needed, right? And that's a big part of the festival experience. It's very common, not everyone goes to festivals like this, but it's quite common to have large groups of friends caravan to these festivals together and set up their camps all together, creating a little mini village and a sleepover vibe. And they all move in packs, right? I remember one of my first Coachellas, the group that I was in, which I'll share about, they pointed over to some group saying like, oh yeah, those are the gummy bears. Like they were a group that carried around light up gummy bears and they'd been at Coachella for maybe a decade or something. And the group that I was a part of had also been at festivals, particularly Coachella, because they were a Southern California group of friends for about a decade before I ever came across the world. And this was a really big group, bigger than most. When I first met them at Coachella, they had, no exaggeration, they had about 50 campsites all together with about 100 people that vaguely were acquainted with each other, right? Some closer than the others, but it created this huge group of people. And they really rolled deeper than most, but it actually ended up being a real plus for me because if you ran out of water, someone would have it, right? If you needed to go to the bathroom, someone else would need to go to the bathroom too. If you were overwhelmed in a massive crowd, there was someone else to take the lead and you could just follow the group. So many elements that created a greater sense of safety within this massive event space, right? Because I could be in a crowd of people, of hundreds of thousands of people perhaps, right? And look around and the closest 30 people to me would be people I knew. They were part of my group. And so for the first time ever, I really felt like I found some kind of sense of family, and I really got to experience that feeling of belonging, which I had quite honestly never really felt before in my life. And that is ultimately what this space offers for the folks that are drawn to it. The festival and rave spaces are home for creatives and weirdos just like me that maybe didn't fit in other spaces before. And really, when we're talking about solving the epidemic of loneliness, belonging is the antidote to isolation. And these spaces aren't just about connecting with your friends and the people that you know. One of the most unique things about this space that I have never experienced anywhere else, like not just live music events, only at festival and rave events, have I experienced people who are friendly and open, and they want to stop and say hello, actually learn your name, maybe chat for a while. You know, they're trying to get over to their friends, but you seem pretty cool, like let's hang out for a bit. I had never experienced that, and honestly, it kind of weirded me. I was like taken aback by it. And the truth is, like, how sad is that? It felt unfamiliar at first because it is so rare. Like I said, I have never quite experienced that kind of vibe anywhere else. And that's so sad for our world, right? It shouldn't be unusual for humans to feel open enough to chat and connect with each other. It shouldn't be more normal to suffer in isolation than to feel like you belong. But in the festival world, honestly, connection is a part of the culture. It's a part of the environment and the shared intention of these spaces. And yes, ultimately, it is a part of altered states of consciousness too. Many of these substances commonly present in these spaces help to lower our guards and open us up to feel safe to connect with each other. They soften our defenses, quiet social anxiety, and they allow our walls to drop and finally allow connection to feel natural. And that's what I experienced. Having so much social anxiety, it never felt natural for me to connect with folks until those experiences. Finally, we make it to altered states of consciousness, right? And you can't have a conversation about the festival and rave world without naming this. It is a very big element to those spaces. At these events, substances are omnipresent. And I'm going to speak to a specific category of substances, psychedelics and empathogens. These substances are still currently labeled by our federal government as illegal. They are Schedule 1 drugs, which means that they have been labeled as not medically useful. But at the same time, for the last maybe decade, they are being researched at institutions like Johns Hopkins and Harvard and showing great therapeutic potential. Research is showing promising, effective treatment for anxiety, depression, PTSD, and substance abuse disorders, as well as other things, right? That's just a few of them. And the truth is, these aren't new discoveries. In fact, Harvard was studying LSD and psilocybin all the way back in the 50s and 60s until the government banned them and started the war on drugs. And ultimately, even beyond that, it's not new because indigenous cultures have been using them for centuries. And like I mentioned at the end of my point about community, these substances often create a sense of openness. They help us drop our walls down and be more open to connecting, be more open to things that feel scary, things that activate our fear response. And so, like I mentioned, it was really powerful for me as someone who had struggled with social anxiety for many years and was actually unknowingly living with symptoms of CPTSD. When I first experienced an empathogen, I had never felt so safe in my life. I felt connected to love in a way that I never had known of feeling love or loved. And in this, it softened a lot of the rigid, protective isolation strategies that I had installed earlier in my childhood to keep me safe, but they were now keeping me isolated. And so over time, it allowed me to learn that it was safe to connect with others and begin doing the work to heal those parts of myself that felt like connection was unsafe. And ultimately, that's what makes empathogens like MDMA so effective and powerful in a clinical setting. They are finding that they are very helpful in helping folks with treatment-resistant PTSD. They can utilize this altered state of consciousness during therapy so that they can feel safe enough to explore memories where trauma may have happened or things that they couldn't actually access when they were so closed off and stuck in fear. And so it's been incredibly powerful for people in their healing journeys in research. Now let's talk a little bit about psychedelics. Slightly different than an empathogen. Maybe I should define a little bit. Empathogen would be something that really elicits a lot of oxytocin, which is crucial when connecting through social bonding, right? It's released when a mother connects with her baby for the first time. It's released during a hug. So it increases that and it increases your ability to empathize with other people. That's why empathogen. Whereas a psychedelic, something like LSD or psilocybin, these substances are a little bit different and they tend to be very ineffable in their being able to explain the experiences. They can provide mystical experiences, but ultimately what they tend to do is really change the way that the brain works, which, like I mentioned in our last video, begins to activate a very childlike frequency, right? A sense of wonder and curiosity, openness, and really fresh eyes on the world, like fresh perspective. And this isn't just poetic language, like I said, they literally change the way your brain works. They increase neuroplasticity, which means that they increase the ability for your brain to change and create new neural pathways, which means new thoughts, new habits, new patterns. So if you are trying to change your life, they increase the ability for your brain to start anew. They really soften rigid patterns. They amplify entrenched beliefs, giving you the opportunity to examine them and maybe rewrite them. They increase communication across different brain regions, which means that you're getting greater connections and understandings. And in simple terms, ultimately what they do is they help you loosen the grip of old stories that are running your life. And that's the reason why psychedelics have been so pivotal in my own journey. For years, I lived with chronic body pain and chronic fatigue. And I tried to go to doctors to find out what was wrong, but they never could give me really a straight answer. But in these festival settings, when I would drop, I would get into that altered state, and all of a sudden, something fascinating would happen. My pain would just disappear, and I would have electric energy. I would be able to dance all day. And I finally felt free in my body. I finally felt like my body matched my age, because I'd been hobbling around feeling like a 60-year-old for the past few years. And so when that happened, it made me realize that while I was feeling physical pain, it wasn't like a physical injury, right? It was somehow connected to the emotional and mental pain that I was in. And that deeper understanding unlocked enough for me to eventually heal myself. So I spent 8 years in chronic pain, and I've been living pain-free for 5 years. Woo! Let's celebrate it. But here's the thing that I want to make sure that you're absolutely clear on. These substances, like psychedelics and empathogens, they are not like a magic solution. As much as the pharmaceutical companies want us to believe there's just some magic pill that will rid us of all our problems, that's really not the way these substances work. And ultimately, they are simply just catalysts that amplify what you bring into the experience, your awareness, your ritual, your integration. When you use those elements within your experiences, that's when you can accelerate your healing through festival and rave experiences. But without intention, integration, and all of those things, they can just simply reinforce escapism, avoidance, addiction, and excess. Remember this, we'll go into it in a later video, but it's important. What can be adaptive can also be maladaptive. And what that basically means is that psychedelics are powerful agents of change. Just like I said, they literally make your brain more malleable and impressionable for anything. And so while they can be catalysts for change for the good, they can just as easily be catalysts towards change that is not serving you. Because here's the truth, not everybody who enters these spaces is transformed. For me, what turned all those years of partying into real change was integration. And if you don't know what integration is, it means taking elements from these weekends and bringing them back into my life. And in fact, I've listed all of those elements. So even if you don't go to a festival, if you take the 8 elements that I have talked about in these 2 videos, those medicines will transform your life the more that you integrate them into your everyday. Creativity and self-expression, inner child work, ecstatic aliveness, nature, dance, community, and yes, altered states of consciousness. Although what I mean more than taking substances on a daily basis and relying on external substances to give you that kind of connection with yourself, instead utilizing ancient practices such as meditation and breath work to help you access those states on a daily basis, help you come back to center, and help you really connect more deeply to your inner guidance. So ultimately, yes, I received great healing from the festival world, but the transformation wasn't in the peak experience. That was simply a doorway. What I did afterward is what truly changed my life. And I'll be getting into more ways to integrate powerful medicine into your life in coming videos. If you enjoyed this one, please hit like and subscribe. I'd love to hear what you thought and which element are you most excited to bring more of into your life? Let me know in the comments below, and I can't wait to see you for my next video. Until then, bye.